All right, let's go to another band, Spiritualized, and their album, Ladies and Gentlemen, We Are Floating in Space. In the opening montage, you heard the title track, and now you're going to hear Cool Waves. Okay, Matt, what are the stats?
Ladies and Gentlemen, We Are Floating in Space by Spiritualized. We got quite the album names back to back here. It comes in at number 51 in the 1990s on Best Ever Albums, number 5 in 1997, number 250 of all time. It is Spiritualized highest rated album on Best Ever Albums. Did not make Rolling Stone's list, and Spiritualized ranked number 202 over overall artist rankings on Best Ever Albums.
All right, this album came out June 16th, 1997, and Spiritualized is an English rock band formed in 1990 in Rugby, Warwickshire, England, by Jason Pierce, formerly of Spaceman 3. John and I did talk about Spaceman 3, Season 3, Bonus 29, so check that out.
Playing with Fire, right? I believe was the album,
I think
right?
so, yeah.
Yeah.
We've got Jason Pierce on vocals and guitar, Kate Radley on organs and piano, Sean Cook on bass and harmonica, and Damon Reese on drums and percussion on this album. This is their third studio album of 9. They are still together. Their most recent album was 2022. Genres are indie rock, dream pop, ambient pop, neo-psychedelia, space rock, shoegaze, and slowcore, making its reappearance. It influences Velvet Underground, Stooges, Neil Young, 13th Floor Elevators, Suicide, Jane's Addiction. Similar artists, Sigur Rós, Black Rebel Motorcycle Club, Dandy Warhol's Galaxy 500, My Bloody Valentine, and Mogwai. And their 2012 album, Sweetheart, Sweet Light, reached 60 on the Billboard 200. They don't have any singles on the Hot 100. Some fun facts about the band. So, as I alluded to, the group was formed after Spaceman 3 disbanded, and they basically, Jason Pearson, the other kind of lead guy from Spaceman 3, had a falling out. So all of the band disbanded, but then everybody but the one guy got back together, and then they added somebody else and said, okay, we're now spiritualized. But due to
we're going to leave the shoegaze behind.
But due to the technicality, they had to, since they are pretty much the same band, they had to maintain the Spaceman 3 recording contract with their dedicated records label. So they put out one single, which was in 1990, which was a cover of the Trog song "Any Way You Want Me," and that fulfilled the contract, and then they could use the Spiritualized name. So that's just a weird thing. The album's title is from the philosophical novel Sophie's World by Justine Gardner. Did you guys ever read that in school?
I can't say I have.
Not only have I not read it, I've never heard of it.
Okay. I remember reading it either in late middle school or high school. I don't remember.
Oh, check out the big brain on Josh over there. Yeah. Good job, Josh.
So that was weird. It's not a book I had thought about. It's a philosophical type of book, but it's not a book I had thought about forever. Anyway, that's where the title comes from. The album itself was recorded shortly after the breakup of band members Jason Pierce and Kate Radley, the keyboard player. Radley secretly married Richard Ashcroft of The Verve in 1995 when they broke up. I thought that was crazy. Ooh. How did that happen? And then the Verve connection, too, I thought was interesting. I just don't know how one secretly marries another person. But I guess that's rock music for you. The album closer, Cop Shoot Cop, is named after the New York industrial rock band Cop Shoot Cop that John and I covered earlier in the season. And
a lot of references to John and Josh albums there, yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's weird how it worked out. And then original pressings of the title track incorporated lyrics and melody of Elvis Presley's Can't Help Falling in Love, which I'm sure you heard listening. The Presley estate initially objected to this, and they had to use a remixed version of the song with new lyrics. And then by 2009, they were allowed to use it again with the provision that the Presley song would be included in the titles with parentheses, which is how it shows on Wikipedia, but on then they stopped using it for the reissues, just removed that. So like on Amazon Music, where I listen to music, it's not on there, the parentheses title, but it's clear in the lyrics. You can hear it when you listen to the song. Dr. John plays piano and backing vocals on Cop Shoot Cop, which I thought was interesting. And I don't know if you checked out this list, John, but in 2019, Far Out ranked the album 29 on their list of the 50 best shoegaze albums of all time. And in 2020, Rolling Stone ranked the album number 13 on their list of greatest stoner albums of all time, which I looked at that list and
this album on the shoegaze interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that stoner list is not good. It seems very completely arbitrary to me.
I mean, stoner list I get. I don't see the shoegaze part as much, but hey, more power.
Yeah, I mean, this album is kind of a stoner album, but some of the other songs on that albums on that list are like, okay, you're just listing good albums. Like, they're not particularly like stoner albums. Anyway, Spiritualized, a band I've never heard of until this week. So let's start with, we'll go back around the horn. Matt, what do you think of this album?
I had heard of Spiritualized. I actually own a Spiritualized album.
Nice.
What was the one? I think it was the one that you said was their highest selling, or
Sweetheart, Sweet Light.
Yeah, Sweetheart, Sweet Light,
Mm-hmm.
which is that. I'm like, now that I'm looking at that, I'm like, that's like a Velvet Underground,
It's like White Light, White Heat. That's exactly what I thought
thing,
of.
you know?
Yeah.
And the weird thing is, I don't know why I own that record. I don't know. I must have heard a song from that on like Sirius XM radio, because that came out in 2012. So I was definitely listening to a lot of Sirius XM radio then, and like that's probably because I never saw them live. I don't remember anybody telling me, "Hey, check this band out." So I probably just heard that, you know, on the radio and bought the record, and or maybe I think at that time when I was downloading it. But anyway, like I did like that album a lot, so I was excited to kind of visit this one. And yeah, this is I can kind of see the shoegaze in terms of like, I mean, it's probably more like, I don't know, this is like more of a psychedelic, almost like space rock kind. There's like a Pink Floyd vibe to this, but also there's a lot of big guitars and like and in some places cacophonous sounds, like just like, especially like at Cop Shoot Cop, like there's just this interlude where it's just like noise, right? And sometimes shoegaze can kind of get like that. So overall, I liked it. It is a long record. It's 70 minutes. It's actually funny you brought up the Verve, because I was thinking somewhat along the lines of my reaction to the Verve record, in that I like a lot of this. I can't say that I love it to the extent that I feel like I could or should. I feel like there's a lot of stuff in here that's right up my alley. I would say I think I responded to this a little bit more than the Verve album. And I think, I don't know, maybe that's just because of some of the effects that they're going for, the production. It's a little bit more interesting. It's a little less traditional, more experimental. And I think because of that, it makes it a little bit more, appealing. Because it's also still, it's still melodic. It still has, it's some grounding and some melodies and stuff like that. So, there's like it's very spacey, right? It's very like floating in space is kind of like the feeling you get listening to a lot of these songs. And then some of them are kind of like full blown like rock songs. Like Come Together is kind of more of a straight ahead rock song. Electricity is kind of more straight ahead. And even in a song like Cop Shoot Cop, which you mentioned the band, but I picked up on the lyrics. The opening lyrics was basically the John Prine. Like, was it, there's a hole in my arm where the money used to go. Jesus Christ died for someone, I suppose. I'm like, I think that's John Prine. I looked it up. I'm like, yeah, I was right. So I remember that from the John Prine song. So they're definitely like pulling things from different places, like Elvis, John Prine, Cop Shoot Cop, right? Yeah. And kind of putting it together. But yeah, I like this overall. I would say that it's similar. Like I said, I wouldn't say that I loved it. I don't know if I listened to it more, if I would like it more. I think this is kind of a record that the first time I hear it, my reaction is going to be kind of similar to what it is the second and third and maybe 10th time that I hear it. But it's not a bad thing. I think that it's an interesting record. And even when they do like the really drawn out kind of like cacophonous, freakouts, I guess, for lack of a better word, I didn't find myself reaching for the dial, as you know what I mean. Like I was listening to that with the Cop Shoot Cop. I'm like, they're all over the place, and it's in some ways it's almost designed to kind of be off-putting, but I didn't find it that off-putting. There's other songs that, that we've done before and that have come after this, where they do stuff like that. And I'm like, all right, stop it. But I was kind of like, it almost like faded to the background a little bit, and I was okay with it, oddly enough. So even that didn't push me away. So I kind of like this. It's got its own little unique vibe, although it's drawing from a lot of different things. But I think that it's also kind of a different sounding record in the way that it's produced and whatnot. So I think there's a good amount of variety on here between the upbeat and the slower songs, and so it's definitely a thumbs up. And I like that other album that I mentioned before. I would probably check it out. I did see somewhere that some music critic or magazine or whatever said this was the best album of the year, even better than OK Computer. And I was like, whoa, okay, it's good. It's not that, slow down, but still very good album. I did enjoy it. Thumbs up for me.
Well, hot take, Matt. This album's not better than OK Computer, so you can feel safe in that one. Somewhat similar feelings to you, Matt. It's funny you say that Verve album because we reversed, right? Like I said that, and I was like, I wonder how everybody else is gonna feel, and you're like, I kind of felt the same way. And as I was listening to your take, a lot of the same thing. A lot of it mirrored kind of my take on it. I will say this: I recognized pretty much immediately that this was what I call a sit in place album. In other words, you can't just put this on and attempt to get it right.
Yeah.
It just you won't connect with it if you're just trying to listen. And my first listen on most albums, the first time I listen to them usually is, unless I'm aware of what I'm getting or there's a specific reason why I choose to listen to it this way. The first one is kind of like what I call a loose listen, that I usually put it on in spaces where I'm listening relatively intently, but not fully. And then my second listen is usually like on headphones or a more intent listen. I recognized early into this, I'm like, I can't listen to this loose. It's going to have to be two listens, one on headphones and one with a little bit more attention. And usually that's like a night space for me when I'm listening. When I listened on headphones, there were parts of most of the songs that I liked. There was stuff going on, but I kept thinking it was going to be more complex than it was. And outside of the final song that just was like Empty the Kitchen Sink in terms of everything in there, and Cop Shoot Cop, where you do get lots of different stuff. It's almost like prog rocky in some ways, and they keep shifting what it's doing throughout the entire. It's a different type of prog rock than those who like prog rock would process as prog rock, but it has the same general function. I think I kept coming back to the idea of there not being an easy entry point for me on this album. I would put it thumbs in the middle for me. I liked it better each time I listened to it, but like you, Matt, I think there's a ceiling to this album where repeated listens will only take it so high. And I think it's because I just couldn't, I couldn't, you got to be careful sometimes of defining an album too quickly, because you fall into cliches or you don't give it as much thought. It's just too easy to like compare it to something else, right? Like offhand, because you're like, oh, it's kind of like this thing. I try to use those reference points for people, but also try to like figure out how it works in like my own personal system. I struggled a little bit to kind of connect it with myself. And like you said, Matt, there's parts of all of these songs that I feel like I would like. It's stonery for sure, but it's not so stonery that it loses me into the cliche or the existential that sometimes stoner music can feel like nothing to me. Like it's powder in your hands. It's there and it's not unpleasant, but there's no substance to it either. It didn't fall too dreamy like that. There was like the shoegazy or noise rock elements to it, but not interesting enough or discordant enough for me in the way that I like the beauty and the ugly like mix. There wasn't enough of that necessarily to bring me in. there wasn't like a hidden gem song where I'm like, oh, that's the standout track on this. As much as there was on this, I think probably the two songs I liked best were Electricity and Broken Heart, were two that I liked. They're the two that I put on the playlist for this week. But this falls into the category of, it's hard for me to describe it, because yeah, I can give you like 12 different bands that to some degree it sounds like, but it is kind of its own thing. I didn't know that Spaceman 3 was connected to this band at all. I remember Spaceman 3 sort of being a mix of noise rock, shoegaze, mixed with almost like at times like garage rocky type elements or glammy elements to it as well. It's funny that we talked about like John Core being shoegaze, because while I liked that album, I didn't love that album, and I remember saying, oh, I don't connect with it as much as I do some of the other albums we covered. It kind of left me a little flatter, and that's kind of where I stand on this one as well. Josh, where were you on this one? Because I couldn't. I figure it could go either way for you, knowing your taste. I kind of knew that Matt was going to be a little flat on this album too, interestingly enough. Where are you on this one? Did it like bridge the gap for you, or did it leave you flat?
No, it surprisingly it bridged the gap for me, and I really like this
album. That doesn't surprise me, and that is like, here's where I'm really interested in your take, Josh, because I feel like this is where you deviate from Matt and I a little bit, so I'm here for it.
Yeah, I really like the kind of fusion of sounds and genres that they have on this. I feel like this album has a big epic sound and feel to it, with all of the kind of build on the songs and the cacophony of noises when it really like bursts and explodes. I really like the horns on this throughout. I feel like that punctuates things and really adds an element to it, in a way that I like. The title track is a song I feel like I've heard before somewhere. I don't know where, maybe, but it had this familiarity to it. And so that kind of drew me in initially, or intrigued me. And then throughout the album, it just kind of kept surprising me. I hear what you guys are saying about it might have a ceiling, and it might come to that for me eventually, but all the times I've listened to it, and it was the album I was most intrigued to like kind of re-listen this week, to kind of get more out of it. And I enjoyed it every time, and it kind of deepened the more I listened to it. Come Together, I feel like, is a great song. It's got this kind of drive to it that I really respond to, and then the horns come in and add something to it. I know, John, you said that it didn't have a lot of complexity, but I really liked kind of the layering of sounds that was going on, in like a song like I Think I'm in Love.
I wouldn't say I didn't think it had a complexity. I just kept waiting for it to have more complexity than it did in terms of the composition, would probably be the way I'd describe it.
Got it. Okay. And so I like that this, for some reason, I wasn't bothered by the songs like kind of taking their time and maybe leaning into that space rock type of feel. I guess too, because it kind of, I think Matt, you said this, it is like guitar driven, that it doesn't feel like dream pop to me, and it kind of has the heft to it that a lot of the dream pop and stuff doesn't have. It's kind of akin to dream pop, but it's not really. So maybe that's kind of like the space rock deviation. I don't know.
I don't really see a lot. I don't know. What do you think, Matt? I don't see a lot of dream pop in this album for me personally.
It's spacey. There's qualities to it. Like I get like the ethereal kind of like, yeah, it's like a dream world, a little bit in a way. Now it might be a little bit louder, but I get that. It's not direct, but it's there.
I'm not saying it's dream pop. I'm just saying it as like a corollary. It's kind of like a heavier, maybe, I don't know, more guitar driven dream pop sound.
Okay.
I really like kind of the gospel element that's put into this album.
Yeah, there's that too. Yeah. And the strings.
I really responded to that. There's also gospel singers, I think, backing up on times. And you mentioned Electricity, John. I really feel like that's like a Black Rebel Motorcycle Club. I kind of got the same vibe of some of their songs as I did on this. Broken Heart sounds like a movie score to me, so I don't know, I just kind of felt kind of taken away with that song.
I thought the same thing, and oddly enough, I had a specific reference to that. It reminded me of Gattaca.
Oh,
like the scene, like this last scene in Gattaca where Ethan Hawke goes out into space and stuff. I'm like, is this from
Gattaca?
And I actually,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you guys said.
Broken Heart.
Broken Heart, the track.
Okay.
And actually, I looked up the soundtrack to Gattaca and it wasn't on there. And I was like, okay, it's been a while since I've seen it, but I was, for some reason, I was taken directly to that specific movie.
Yeah, and then Cool Waves is the song I picked for the opener. Again, like bringing it back to that gospel. I really like the organ on that, and I just kind of like the repetition and feeling of like being on waves almost, with the way they repeat stuff on there. So yeah, this was a not typical type of like album I would think I would respond to, but I did this week, and I thought it was interesting. It's
funny you say it, because it's just full disclosure, Josh. There's people that listen to the show will sometimes say, when they're talking to me, they're like, John, it seems like your takes and Josh line up a lot. And I'm like, well, actually, no, I think like I line up just as much with Matt as I do with Josh. It's just there's certain sounds where Matt and I will like battle each other a little bit. And it just so happens that like some of our preferred sounds sometimes hit each other, but there's a large soft underbelly under that, right, where Matt and I line up quite a bit. And as I was listening this week, and it's so funny that we did Yo La Tengo and this album back to back, and that's why even when I threw to you, Josh, I was like, I think Josh is gonna like this album, and Matt and I are not going to. And I think that like if you take a middle, right, because I did not dislike the Spiritualized album, just like you didn't dislike the Yo La Tengo album, but like what each of those albums is, like one of them pushes into like the secret sauce for you, Josh, that I kind of have suddenly been able to, through years of doing this, like recognize it's for you, and doesn't for me. And then I knew that like the Yo La Tengo album was going to push into like parts that were not going to be as appealing for you. So I can't explain what it is, but I just knew you were going to like this one for some reason. Right. So interestingly
it's like this weird like gray area on the spectrum that they kind of overlap or something.
And I had a couple overthinking elements, but I'll let Matt go next.
No, I was just going to say, I did like this record. I'm probably in the middle of you guys is what it is. When I hear you guys talk, I'm kind of like, because I'm picking up both things that you're saying, but I probably like it more than John and not as much as Josh.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yep. And maybe you are the middle, Matt, between the two of them, because I was like kind of like it, and you're like I solidly like it, and Josh is like I really like it. So you represent the line of which Josh and I are stepping to either side of.
Yeah, and I would characterize this. That's why I brought up the verb. It's like, man, there's a lot of things in here that are right up my alley, and I think I get a little bit more out of this than I do the Verve overall, because the Verve had like two great songs, and then the rest were like okay. This has several, I think, very good, very great songs, but I think John put it well. I think there's like a cap, there is a plateau, right? There's like a certain level it'll get you to, and I just don't know if I listen to this a bunch more times I'm going to see the light, as it were.
Right.
It just there isn't a string that I felt the need to pull further on this album to explore, would be the way I'd describe it.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you enjoyed it, Josh, because I like these episodes when we see variations between our various tastes.
Yeah, I like the discovery too of a band I've never even heard of,
Yeah, and I forgot to you brought up that song, John, Broken Heart, Josh, but that the strings are pretty cool. The strings in the gospel, like I think those are some of the elements that I'm like, he's melding a bunch of things here and making it a little bit more interesting. So those parts are pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I did like that the other record that I bought. So it's a band I would probably check out more of their stuff as well. So
yeah, one of the fun things about putting these episodes together is that idea that even if I don't like love an album, if you guys do, you find a hidden gem for yourselves and I find them for myself. It's kind of like a shared experience. So that's really cool.